Welcome to the Connection Podcast. I am Lauren Dry, also known as the Connection Catalyst. Connection and this podcast for me is personal. As a driven professional, I found myself an expert in all things work and business, but it was at home that I really needed clarity and ease. After finally finding it one marriage breakdown and one marriage reset later, and finally discovering what really works to have connection in modern relationships, using science, simplicity and soul, our signature program Rise into Regulation was born that's giving so many others in modern driven relationships back clarity and ease for good. On the podcast today, we're going to dive deep together on all things relationships, business, identity and leadership. And clarity and ease is at the heart of it all, and we are so happy to be with you so that you can have what you need in connection, mind, body and soul too. You know how in the last episode we went over the toxic patterns that men fall into and what's actually going on underneath? Well, today we are turning that same lens around onto us. Now, this is the one that can feel a little bit stretchy, and it's not because we are trying to point the finger or shift blame or give either side, men or women, an opportunity to pick each other apart. What's going to really help with this episode is understanding what is driving our reactions, our feelings and desires underneath so that we can become lighter and clearer and the relationship has a lot more ease. So my husband this time is going to be going over and reading out the toxic patterns that women get called out for, and we're going to unpack what's actually happening underneath, what we are protecting in these moments and what creates real change in the dynamic without more pressure, overthinking or finger pointing. If you are someone who is already quite self-aware and you're already doing a lot of work and you just want things to feel easier and more connected, this is the episode for you. Let's dive in. I know we talk about this stuff all the time on the podcast, but I'm not going to lie, I am feeling nervous being interviewed by you and going over some of the toxic patterns that we see in women, also in relationships too, and putting myself on the spot and getting called out by my husband. But I'm excited. I think this is really important, and I think it's going to help so many women and men see what's happening underneath the surface and start to bridge that gap a bit more. Thanks for coming on the podcast, honey.
It's good to be here again. There's obviously a lot of guys out there that struggle to understand the way that women do the things they do and why they do the things they do and how they're feeling. So, yeah, if it's going to bring some clarity around that, it's going to be pretty beneficial because it took me a while to figure it out and sort of figured it out along the way as we went. All right, here we go. First question. So controlling disguised as caring, and then how that's coming across as contempt for men. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's really tricky because I think this is one that is going to hit a really sore spot for a lot of women who feel like if they don't do it, it's not going to get done. And maybe they feel like if they don't correct or fix or schedule or make comments about parenting or whatever the controlling thing is, that not only will it not get done, but she'll have to bear the consequences of it not getting done. Or when it's not being done right, that she'll have to bear the consequences of the kids maybe not having their lunchbox or a specific food item, or the whole family not being able to get out of the house on time because no one could find out where their shoes were because the shoes weren't put back in the right place. What's happening for the women a lot of the time is that there is a micro cascade of events happening in their brain that they are already on top of, but for other people, they're not going to be able to see why it's so important that the shoes get put away straight away in the right place in this exact same way, because she's already mapped out the sequence of events that happens over the next 7 days as a consequence of these shoes not being in the exact right place. And I think that it's fair because this can become toxic, and I've definitely felt it. It's the very definition of hypervigilance, of being so hyper aware of what the problems are that you can't see the wood for the trees anymore. And you start to gain a real sense of safety from things being perfect. Mm-hmm. And as a consequence, you try to control the life and the love out of a relationship, even sometimes a relationship with your own kids, your own partner, and you start to completely lose the aspect of trust that they have the capacity or the capability to help you at all. So to overcompensate, you jump in and correct and fix and do it yourself. And I agree. I think it comes across as contempt for your partner. And I think that that's a really important accountability moment to go, okay, how much of the control that I am putting into this space gives me a sense of self-soothing at the expense of connection, and how much is truly necessary and how much really communicates, I don't trust you. I don't have faith that if we let this fall apart that it won't be corrected. And I think that that's tough, because I think in the tricky, messy middle, if you do stop controlling things, if you do take your foot off the gas, so to speak, things do fall apart, because that push-pull dynamic, that anxious avoidant dance, it feels alarming for both people when the person who's used to controlling everything stops, because then things do fall apart and there are going to be consequences for that. But I think it's important to ask that question as a woman, how much of what you're doing around control is to self-soothe from the fact that maybe you don't feel safe and secure and you're not having those more difficult conversations, and it feels scary to regulate and try and figure out what of the maybe the bigger core values are missing here, because those conversations feel dangerous and maybe you feel scared that larger accountability piece is not going to be met.
Yeah, long term, if you're really wanting your partner to be able to step up into his own, taking control of his own life, and you're constantly stepping in and jumping in to correct him when he's trying to find his way, you've got to make mistakes to learn. I mean, it sort of counterbalances that a little bit. So you're saying, I want you to step up and be the man in the house, but I also need to show you that I need to put the shoes on this exact way.
Yeah.
When you don't have to. It's a case of that's how you want them to be, to show that you've got control of a situation. But something to be aware of as a man, like you can't have it both ways. If you want the man to step up and take a bit more responsibility, you have to let him do it.
I agree. And I think one of the episodes that I've recorded before around the connected boundaries that we have about the priorities in our family, I think that really helps as well. When we start to lose our way, just making sure that we remember what our priorities are. You know, quality time is more important than where the shoes are. Conscious parenting is more important than being there on time, although it'd be really great to get there on time. So those kinds of things, if you don't have them already, having those kinds of agreements can really help create safety for both people to let go of the reins a little.
All right. So the next trait would be scorekeeping. And so this is the mental ledger that women keep against men and how this affects the relationship.
I do think that this is a really common toxic trait that have definitely been guilty of in the past. And I think it's a really hard one to let go of, especially if you have a lot of resentment and maybe you have this unconscious track of all the things that have ever gone wrong. And what happens is the mental ledger definitely gets built up when there's this push and pull dance between abandoning yourself for the relationship and feeling like there's nothing left. So maybe you're trying to grit your teeth and be really, really nice and show up and just be like, yes, it doesn't matter. I'm going to forgive and forget. It's fine. Versus the second pull, which is, okay, well, stuff this. You know, I'm not going to be helped. I'm not going to be cared for. I'm not going to be loved. So may as well throw all the cards on the table and be done with it. And it is toxic. It doesn't help the relationship. And also, I completely resonate with how this can be a byproduct of storing up resentment for so long. I think this makes sense when you have a really busy life. So it can feel like the easiest thing to do is just brush something off, not have that conversation, leave it alone, keep pushing through. And then before you know it, it could even just be a couple of days worth of just brushing something off and it's too much. And your nervous system has been clocking it because instead of even self-repair or creating empathy, what we're doing is just shoving it to the side because there's too much else to worry about. So in order to compensate for shoving it all down, it all blows up. And in order to compensate for the nervous system blow up, so the overreaction or the yelling or the snipping and contempt, what happens is I think as women, we try to seek justification instead of connection. So I reacted like this and I reacted this badly because of this, and this. So we try to justify it and balance it out. And look, it's not fair. I understand where it comes from, but I definitely relate to that's something of being that I would reach for in the past, especially if it was a pattern. Like, oh, I've clocked this and I've forgiven it and I've tried to be the bigger person and then it would pop up again. And I think what's really necessary to not have to choose between, okay, abandoning myself just to play nice or blowing up and trying to use this avalanche of things that I haven't communicated well about in the past as a justification for my blow up. I think what's really important is to remember how much peace you can get out of working on your own regulation, which is definitely what I got, which is why Rise exists, because then I was able to get a lot more simplicity back around what my problems really were. And instead of clocking a pattern and feeling like I have to justify a really big blow up or big reaction, instead simplifying, okay, I'm joining the dots. This is one of my core values and we really need to sit down and have a conversation about it, because not having safety is one of my core values, emotional safety, in a certain topic. We need to create a game plan as opposed to just dealing with each little micro problem as it comes up.
Yeah, makes sense. So next trait would be contempt, dressed up as being right. The eye roll, the tone, the obviously, and the sigh. What are your thoughts on that?
Fair. I think that's fair. I think I've been guilty of that before. Contempt dressed up as being right. And I think it connects in with the last one as well. It's definitely a protection mechanism. It's kind of like a body behaviour to show, if I show how much I don't care, then I don't have to show how much that hurt me. So, but then it becomes normalised. So even when your partner does try to help or does try to do something differently, it becomes like a program that kicks in. An example might be your husband saying, oh, do you want me to take your dish over to the sink for you, or whatever it is, something little. And instead of going, hey, thanks, it's like, yeah, that'd be great.
Sarcasm.
You know, like sarcasm and contempt. And underneath what that is, it's like, yeah, that'd be nice if you did that all the time, like duh, which is horrible when you put it like that, because it's a good point, but also completely ruins and wrecks the attempts that your partner's trying to connect and repair or create connection for in the first place.
Yeah, it might just be struggling to find that opening to try and connect back with you, and if you're shutting it down straight away.
Yeah. And I think it's just it's this protection mechanism that lies to us and says, if I am not vulnerable, if I'm not appreciative, if I'm not on this and being hypervigilant and hyper aware all of the time, then I'll be let down and I'll have my heart broken and I'll be abandoned. So what's easier is to be on my guard and to give him things to work on so that eventually he'll hit that milestone of, oh, okay, it's good enough and maybe we can both relax. But then neither of us ever get there, because nothing you would ever be doing would be good enough ever, because I'm still focused on being locked in. And even the things that you would be doing to try and help, I'll shut down because I'm so scared that if I show that I'm appreciative, it'll be the last time it ever happens.
Yeah, so how do you get around that?
So I think a lot of accountability is important, and a different kind of accountability that a lot of women do have. A lot of women do have accountability around, okay, if I just do my breathing, I say this nicer, and I grit my teeth and I just push through. And so we get really good at masking. But our whole body is screaming instead. And that's where the eye rolls come from, the huffs and the puffs and the sighs. It's because we're actually not on the same team as our body. And so we think that we're being accountable by saying the nice thing and doing the nice thing and behaving in the right way. But we don't believe it. We think it's a performance and we're resentful that we have to do it. But regulated communication is different. It's a lot of security. It's a lot of clarity. And instead of feeling like we have to say, well, yeah, of course, we can be grateful and appreciative, but also take the time later on to say, hey, what do you think is fair around stuff like this? But in a way that creates kind of a teamwork conversation as opposed to like blowing everything up.
Yeah, because the tone and the voice, and it's so easy to pick up onto, and the energy that's there, you're probably not disguising it as well as you think you are.
No, not at all. We think that we're so clever, when we're in performance mode. Like, nobody knows that I'm mad. Nobody knows, like, oh, I'm just doing so great at all this. He's the only one with the problems. Nope.
Nice. All right. The last trait would be testing instead of telling. And then what are your thoughts on that? So dropping hints and then seeing if they're picked up on, but then getting upset when they're not.
Oh, yeah, I've done that. I mean, yeah, I think
not that as much as you.
I don't anymore.
No.
I like to think I don't anymore, but it's definitely something that I did do. And a really good example for me is dates. Like I wanted the flowers, I wanted the dates, I wanted the initiation. And I used to say I didn't care. Like I would organize the dates, I would do it all, and I'd hint at the flowers or say that I didn't really need them. And you still would do it occasionally. Like I'm not saying this sounds like you never would buy flowers or take me on a date, but I wanted more. I wanted more than what we had. And so I would drop hints and maybe make suggestions or send you links to things, and it would never lead anywhere. And then I'd get really huffy, and by the time I wanted us to do something, I felt like I had been speaking to you about it for a really long time. And so I would blow up and just be like, oh, I can't believe you haven't done this, and I sent you this, and I told you about this. And I would feel hurt, and I would feel really confused about why you weren't picking up on it. And then we'd go on the date or we'd do the thing, and I would feel kind of huffy half the time anyway. And I'd be like, oh, this is only because I had to fight about it. I had to make you do it.
That's a big one. The whole like, you're only doing this because I asked you.
Yeah, I hated that.
Yeah.
And what I started to realize is it wasn't the date that I wanted at all. It wasn't the flowers that I wanted. It was the initiation. Mm-hmm. And so what I realized is that's a huge value for me. And I wasn't communicating that. And also I think we fell into a really big pattern. This is something that we're starting to slip into a little bit recently, but we're pulling ourselves out of it this month, is that we would allow life to set the pace, and that dates and things would come in and fit around that occasionally.
Yeah.
And then we'd be confused about why we were distant and why we weren't feeling connected. And then it would make fights all the worse. And something we were even talking about last week is just making sure that we're recreating that roadmap again of, okay, our business goals, family goals, holiday goals, whatever it is, they are going to start fitting around the holidays that we create, our family holidays, and date nights. We're going to schedule them in first. And that way, when you have a big job or we have deadlines to meet, they can fit around that, and we've scheduled it out over the years. Yeah. That's always been a plan of ours. Sometimes we've been better at it. We haven't had it on the table at all recently, and I think this is the trap that people who have businesses or really busy lives can slip into. It can feel like everything's urgent all of the time.
Yeah.
And I think it was really, really important for us to begin to have regular conversations about what the core need was underneath it. For me, the core needs are quality time and initiation. And when I notice that that's starting to slip, now what I try and do is have a conversation and say, I don't need the date. I need initiation from you. When are you going to do this? And it needs to be within a certain time frame.
Yeah.
And quality time. Like I'm noticing, giving clear observations, quality time is our highest value, but I've noticed because of the tight deadlines that we've been having, it's slipped. And we haven't had the quality time for a whole day each week and for this many evenings each week. It's just not happened. And so really explaining what the problem is matched up against what my value is. And I think a lot of women, we're really scared to say, I need you to initiate because it feels like we've failed, or it feels like I'm being vulnerable and I'm asking for something that I shouldn't have to ask for. But I think it really matters. And I think that brings back to what you said in the last episode, which is men need concrete information around
simple,
like specific
clear.
As well. Like it's not the date, it's the initiation. I need to feel like you've done this. So the last time we had a date and you had already spoken to your mum, you'd already organised the sitter, you'd already chosen the place that we were going to go to. Like, oh, heaven. Yeah. Sweep me off my feet, put me over your shoulder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and then I guess tying that back into the question is that testing versus telling, it's sort of a case
it's useless. Yeah, it doesn't work.
Comes back to that
and
communication.
I've done it. So yeah. Totally get it. Totally get it.
We can sometimes by asking that, we can sometimes, early on I used to put my walls up and feel like and get defensive, like, oh, you're attacking me for asking for a date night.
Yeah.
But it's not like that anymore. But that was early on before I realised that you're actually just doing what you needed to do, just tell me what I needed to do.
Yeah, to connect.
Yeah.
And I think creating those agreements around values, and that this is covered in the holidays episode where we go over the Connected Boundaries Bible, I think it really matters because often you are talking completely different languages. the man and the woman. And so having something that helps simplify everything can be really, really useful.
And neither of us are mind readers. So.
No, and I don't want to be either. It's a really intrusive energy, and I definitely tried to do that for a really long time, and it doesn't work. And I'm terrible at it. We're all terrible at reading each other's minds. We actually try and interpret other people's actions according to our own traumas and fears and triggers. And it's not worth it, and it doesn't work. And so cancelling mind reading and getting a lot simpler with your communication, creating some better agreements around things like core values, I think that's the foundation and the beginning of being able to have a regulated and secure relationship with anyone.
So, yeah, I guess we've touched on a couple, but there's a few more that to go through before we run out of time today. But summarising in terms of those traits that we've talked about, what's the key in your mind to overcoming some of those traits?
I think being able to have conversations in a safe place like this where it's okay to explore what your toxic traits are without feeling like you're being judged. I'm going to say right now, I felt really vulnerable having this conversation. I know you did at the start, because we want to come across as our best selves with our partner, and there's that temptation to whitewash even your the mistakes that you've forgiven yourself for, or maybe you don't think are even there. But I think it's so important to be able to treat our mistakes or our blind spots with a lot of gentleness and compassion, and especially with your partner. And it can be like walking through a minefield doing it on your own. And sometimes episodes like this can be the best thing to listen to together or to send to each other, and to just get curious about what's actually happening underneath without the judgment, and allowing a lot of room for grace. And that's where new patterns can start to form.
I was just thinking the two biggest things for me is having that curiosity about your partner, and then having that awareness. From my perspective, has always been the biggest help, like working on my awareness and working on my curiosity. Yeah. Those two things are probably, like I love talking about this and I love chatting about these things because it does help, and it helps reinvigorate my learning and keep my growth going. So daily practice, but we're getting there day by day. It's been good.
Well, I think that these two episodes have been probably one of the most powerful yet on the Connection podcast. And I think it's going to create some really beautiful windows of helping men and women understand each other and their own selves a little bit better in relationships. It's a little tricky. There's some minefields. But if this brought up anything for you and you're listening, please come and hang out with me over on Instagram. I'd love to hear what stood out for you most in the comments of the episode. Make sure that you like and follow along to go deeper into the patterns that can overtake our relationships and how to break them as well. I am so happy to be here with you. Please come on over to Instagram to continue the conversation and let us know what you are looking forward to hearing about next on the Connection podcast. Big love.